Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine, and today we are with the manager of champions, Mr. Jim Fannin. How we doing, man?
Doing great. It's to rip off Tracy Smothers. It's great to be alive in Chicago, Illinois on a Friday afternoon. Finally have some breathable air after yesterday, like was choking the life out of me when I went outside. Today's still hot, but you know, I can breathe when I go outside. So it's a good day.
It's a
How about
blessing.
you?
Uh, Not too bad. Like we spoke off air, I'm dealing with a little bit of a knee injury right now, so I've been indoors. Luckily, because I'm like an hour or so away from Chicago, and the air is just as bad here as it is there, and I have asthma, so luckily I've been inside, not having to deal with it. But I'm excited for this. I've been doing some research. You have a lot of history in IWA, IWA Mid-South to be exact, and I'm a
Yes.
huge fan of it. I grew up watching Mid-South and East Coast, so I am so excited to hear all the stories. I'm also curious on your exit from wrestling and your return to wrestling, which I'm sure we will get into.
Okay.
Um, but before we dive into those things, do you want to shout out social medias? I know you have a podcast, all these
Sure.
things
Yeah.
for fans to figure out.
Yeah, so every Friday, a new episode of Fannin's Flashbacks drops. The YouTube version, when we started, it had the recording like we're doing right now. Once I got onto IWTV, we just go audio version on the YouTube, trying to push everybody to IWTV since there's money behind the viewing time that it gets there. Uh, Match clips and promos that we talk about on the episodes are added in on IWTV, so you get to see what we're talking about. Um, because Smart Mark Video has all that footage and has the right to it, so we can use it and we put it in there. I have access to pretty much the entire IWA Mid South library, so as long as a lot of it's not labeled, so the editor has a heck of a time trying to figure out exactly where things are located. And there's been multiple times where the week after the episode has been uploaded and put up, he comes across the perfect footage that would have worked great for the previous episode. He's like, oh. But he is taking the time to like label everything now so that in the future it's going to be easier to find, hopefully. But yeah, every Friday, Fannin's Flashbacks is released. Like I said, the YouTube premieres at 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 Eastern. Almost every week, the American Kickboxer joins me in the live chat and will add his 2 cents because he's in, knows pretty much all of the same people and was on a lot of the shows that end up getting talked about on the episode. Uh, as we record this, today's guest is Isaiah, who American Kickboxer trained. So he had a lot of great insight to add on. In the YouTube chat. And then, like I say, usually later in the day, not every Friday, because sometimes the editor falls behind. Sometimes the Smart Mark guys are too busy with shows that are going on that they're taping and live streaming to get the files put up. But usually we try to have it on IWTV on Fridays as well. We're up to next week will be episode 40, which is a big one. Um, Going to have Not That Tom Green uh, as the guest on that one. So people listening to your podcast will know before anybody else that who the guest is next week. But you can watch that. Say Fannin's Flashbacks is the name of it, and we just talk about. I get a guest from IWA. Sometimes it's just a friend of mine that sat in the crowd and has a different perspective on things because they're seeing it from the vantage point of a fan, and they can add their 2 cents in. Most of the time, though, it's wrestlers that have been on the show with me. I've had Pondo, I've Spider Nate Webb, me, Mitch Page, um, Isaiah, American Kickboxer, Tarek the Great. I was able to get Mark Wolf on right before Mark Wolf passed away. I've had Bull Payne. Mean Mitch Page was a double episode because we talked so much. We had so much history between us. Tank's been on, Toby Klein. So we had a lot of the pretty much anybody that I can know how to get a hold of. And the one that blew everybody's mind was that Jimmy Jacobs sat down and we had like a 4 hour conversation, me and him, with Nick Manawa doing a lot of mediating between the two of us to get us through that one. That one like really blew some people's minds. That was episode 20. Highly suggest that to folks. You get to see a lot of the footage of the animosity between me and Jimmy Jacobs and our 4 year war that went on, and you got to see us in real time semi hash it out between us as we did the podcast. So that's definitely one to go check out. And then you can talk to me on Twitter and Instagram, jfannin73 on both of those. And I try to be as responsive as I can. If I see the notifications, Twitter is just god
Twitter's
awful
terrible.
anymore with trying to like DM notification in any kind of a notification. You just don't get it, and then you just have to randomly click or go to send something and be like, "Oh, how long has this message been
Yep.
waiting for me?" So if I don't immediately get back to you on Twitter, it's probably not that I'm trying to ignore you. It's just I didn't get the notification. But JFannin73 on both of those.
Perfect. Um, so just to start off fun, seeing how this is the I Love Wrestling podcast,
Yeah.
and Jim too, just I mean, I'd have to assume being in this business so far, so long, you have to love it. So where does your love for professional wrestling and the wrestling business begin? Like where does it start?
It starts as a 4 year old growing up. One of the first memories I have in life. Won't say it's the first. I'm not going to go that far, but one of the first memories I have is watching Tommy Rich
Mhm.
on TBS on Saturday nights. My dad was a big wrestling fan, and so I would watch wrestling with him. When I was 4 years old, my dad had an accident at work. He was a hemophiliac, so he was already like on crutches and barely able to walk because of just the wear and tear on his body over the years. And like none of his joints worked very well, so his knees didn't work, his elbows didn't really work. um, they were renovating the building that he was working in, and somebody was holding the door open for him as he was going in on his crutches, and they let go of the door before he had made it all the way in. The door shut on one of his crutches, knocked it out from under him, and he fell off to the side. And with all the renovating that they were doing, they had the windows that they were replacing. The old windows were piled there. They hadn't thrown them in the dumpster yet. So he went through the windows and cut himself to pieces. By the time they got his blood to actually clot, they would have to give him bottles of pig blood to actually make his blood clot since he was a hemophiliac. And by the time they got the blood to clot, the clot formed on his spine. A couple of months later, that clot moved just enough that it severed his spine and paralyzed him from the waist down. So for the rest of his life, he was in a wheelchair from the time I was 4 until he passed away when I was 19. Um, all I had to do with my dad was watch TV. It was all he could do. It was 10 years before the American with Disabilities Act. So sidewalks in Morris, Illinois still had the curbs. They didn't have the ramps. Stores didn't have the automatic doors that every store has now. So he couldn't like get the door open to get in. And if he was able to get into the store, the aisles weren't wide enough for his wheelchair to get through. So he was pretty much stuck at home. And so all we had was TV, and we bonded over the wrestling and became huge wrestling fan just watching it with him. Like say, started with the TBS uh, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and then moved on to like the Crockett's took it over, became world class. Bill Watts's UWF, the AWA. would watch all that. We never cared for Vince McMahon's WWF, didn't watch it, or would watch it just very rarely. But it was just growing up, that was my life. Anytime I'd go to a grocery store, my mother would just park me at the magazine aisle and I'd read Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Inside Wrestling, Sports Review Wrestling, would anything I could get my hands on. And my mom would get me every magazine that had Tommy Rich on it after Tommy Rich had went on to Memphis and was no longer on TBS and I couldn't follow him. She'd get me the wrestling magazines if she saw he was on the cover, and I'd follow his career that way because there's no internet at that point, can't follow it that way. And so it's just growing up, it was just always something that was the one of the major parts of my life. So the love starts back as far as I can remember.
And for you, when did you realize that it was something that you wanted to be a part of? Like what clicked that you didn't want to just be a fan of it anymore?
Absolute, just fell into it backwards. Um, like I grew up in Morris, Illinois, so about an hour southwest of Chicago for people that have never heard of Podunk Morris. And I ended up going to the University of Kentucky for college. My dad's side of the family were all from Kentucky. He was born down there in the hollers of Eastern Kentucky and right by Olive Hill and Moorhead, about an hour and a half east of Lexington, Kentucky, where the University of Kentucky is at. And so I spent my summers down there. We still had property down there. We would go down there, but when my dad and his brother both were hemophiliacs, and so when my dad was 10 years old, there wasn't a hospital within an hour that they could get to, and the doctors like told my grandparents, if you want your kids to live to see their teenage years, you need to get to a big city. So they moved up by Chicago, as close to Chicago as they could tolerate as country folk. They didn't want to be right in the heart of the city. But so we could have the Chicago doctors, they moved up here. I ended up going to the University of Kentucky, found a couple of guys on campus that were wrestling fans. I saw them like trying to like backyard wrestle each other when they were putting up flyer or around the flyers and the little get together, and we just started talking wrestling and became friends. The the older one had internet and a computer, and the internet was just beginning. Al Gore had just invented it, I guess, at that point. And we got onto his computer, and AOL Grandstand had like the pro wrestling section, and we're reading up on stuff, and we just happened to come across a post that Ian Rotten was running weekly shows out of a Kmart building in Louisville, Kentucky, an hour away from where we were at. And all of us had been watching ECW. We were all familiar with Ian Rotten's name. And we're like, well, shit, if there's wrestling within an hour of here, let's go watch it. And we got in the car, and on a Thursday night, we drove from Lexington to Louisville, Kentucky, and we found this old vacated Kmart building that half of it had been turned into a bingo hall and the other half was turned into the Derby Sports Arena and had a wrestling ring in it. And we went in and blown away by the action. American Kickboxer and Tarek the Great was like the opening match, and Kickboxer ran up the side of the wall like he was Jackie Chan or something and came off and did a Hurricane Rana to Tarek the Great, and we were hooked. And then in the main event, when Ox Harley and Man Pondo were beating each other with weapons that fans were handing to him, we're like, what is going on? It was blowing our mind. And we're like, well, we got to come back. And we didn't get front row that first night because the front row was sold out. And people joke about it. Me and Nick Manowa have said it on my podcast a ton of times. Ian Rotten was drawing 300 to 500 people a week in this Kmart building at the time. And David Bixenspan just unearthed 4 TV shows from early 1998 that had aired in the Louisville market when Ian was doing TV tapings. And you could see the crowd, there's a full crowd in there watching these matches. And like, so we had to like call the hotline to reserve our tickets right away because we wanted front row. We wanted to be as close, like third row wasn't good enough. We needed to be front row and be right in the action. And the older one of us, the one that actually had the internet and a computer, he calls the hotline to reserve 3 tickets for the next week, and he leaves his name and he goes, "The only critique I have is the storyline you're running between Kickboxer and Tarek looks exactly like the storyline running on ECW right now with Rob Van Dam and Sabu. And the angle that you're doing in the main event with Ox Harley against Madman Pondo looks exactly like the Raven Sandman feud going on in ECW right now." It's like, but other than that, it's great. And we want to come back. We want front row. He left his name and left his phone number. And 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. And like we were still like hyped and watching tapes and still up from the show because an IWA show runs forever. And by the time it ended and we went to eat afterwards and then got back to Lexington, and I was renting out his basement at the time. So we were in the same house. We were just watching old WCW tapes and NWA tapes. And the phone rings. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can just hear screaming on the other end of the line. "What the fuck do you mean I'm stealing all my shit from ECW?" And it's like, Les is going, I didn't say that. I just said that the storylines were similar. And through that, we ended up striking a friendship up with him out of that. And we would talk to him every week going forward. And then we found out that he was a huge baseball fan. So like Les invites him to go to a Cincinnati Reds game with us. And we're going to a Reds game. And like from there, Les is like, "Well, I really want to get you guys to bring a show to Lexington." And he went into business with Ian for a while and started running shows in Lexington. And like, I didn't have money involved at the time, but I was helping out with security and everything. And like, all of a sudden I was just in it. And it was never anything that I thought I didn't know the first way of trying to go about how to get into it. And just happened to get on the internet one day and see that shows are within an easy drive to get to for us. And uh, a snarky message left on a hotline turns into like 12 years in the wrestling business at that point before I had quit. So it was just happenstance. There was no plan behind it, no thought that it was even possible. And would have thought you were crazy if you'd have told me as a kid that I would be able to do it. And just things happened. And my dad had just passed away at that point. Within a year of the going to the first show, he had just passed away. So when Ian's like, "You're a mouthy little shit, I think I can use you on the show," that was a way to keep my dad's memory alive in me and carry with me, since wrestling was what was our bond. And it was just happenstance. And whether it was a good happenstance or a bad happenstance, I guess would depend on how you look at the story. But, I just fell into it backwards and ran with it.
So, I mean, looking back, and this is going to be a complicated question. Um, how would you describe your relationship overall with Ian Rotten?
At the time, we were best friends. We had grown into best friends around each other hours on end. And I mean, I was his right hand guy from probably 99 to 2009 when I left. like we were inseparable. And if we if we weren't at, like, if I wasn't at his house, I mean, I lived in his double wide trailer for a year and a half when I first graduated college. I moved right into the trailer, and it was, a double wide trailer, and it's got Ian, his wife Patty, his two kids, John Calvin and Joey, his dad, me, Mark Wolf, Corporal Robinson. Uh, I mean, there was like nine of us shoved into this double wide trailer, and then like all the wrestlers would come over after the show, and they'd be watching tapes and talking business and storylines, and like that trailer was just cram packed with people. And it was probably like say probably a year and a half. And then I ended up moving out and getting my own place. But then we'd be on the phone constantly with each other, and like let's do this, let's do that, and trying to find buildings, trying to come up with storylines, trying to come up with, who's who's out there that we should try to bring in on shows. And it was a very close friendship until it wasn't, and it was just one of those things where every interesting story in my life almost is because of that friendship and wouldn't have happened without it. But then 98, like other than like my parents dying and my grandma passing away, almost every heartbreak is through that relationship as well. So it's a very complicated thing. And like I told you before we started, it's nobody's 100% evil, no one's 100% angel, and somewhere in everybody's somewhere in between, and like when he wanted to be, he was the best friend that you could have, and when he didn't want to be, he was the worst friend that you could have. And it was a very rocky and tumultuous friendship. And I tell myself all the time I should have gotten out a lot sooner than I did, or at least away from him. And but I felt a loyalty to the company and to the other guys that were there, and to try to see it through to the end. And it's a complicated thing. But for the longest time we were the best of friends, and I owe him a lot for that. But he also took advantage of a lot, and I think those debts have been paid to where I don't owe him anymore, kind of thing.
Understood. So, like, I think, like, just as a fan looking in, IWA Mid-South at one point was probably the peak of independent wrestling. I mean, if you look at all the names that go through it, all the stories, all the history, and a lot of guys got their start. Like, if you look at the champions in most of the major companies right now, they were in or were top guys in IWA Mid-South before they made it to the WWEs and the AEWs.
Right.
What do you think made IWA Mid-South so special?
Well, you just mentioned it. It was the people, the guys that were on the shows. And it was a great combination because, good or bad or indifferent, whatever your opinion is on Ian Rotten, he knew talent. He had an eye for talent. And he grew up a huge wrestling fan, watching every style of wrestling that was out there. And anytime there was a wrestling show on that he could watch, he was watching it when he was growing up. And he booked IWA Mid South through the eyes of that fandom as he was growing up. So we would have, everybody just said, "Oh, it's a garbage promotion. It's all hardcore." Uh, CM Punk, Chris Hero, Matt Sydal, AJ Styles, American Dragon, you know, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, Jimmy Jacobs.
Nigel
You
McGuinness.
could, Nigel McGinn. Like the, just go look at the 2004 TPI roster, and then you're going to tell me that they're garbage wrestlers. You know, yeah, it had the deathmatch guys, but you'd have the deathmatch, you'd have strong style, you'd have Tarek and Kickboxer doing the light heavyweight stuff, and then that led to Suicide Kid and all the way up to Ricochet, and I mean the list of Matt Seidel was you had everything on those shows, comedy, Memphis, any style that existed made its way onto those IWA shows. And you had all of the top young guys that were trying to make a name for themselves coming in, and they were getting to work in the same locker room with Ricky Morton, Tracy Smothers, Chris Candido, Axel Rotten, all these guys that had a tremendous mind for the business and had seen it all, done it all. And to their credit, with the Ricky Mortons and the Tracy Smothers and the Chris Candidos, they would sit and watch everybody's match. They'd offer them any advice, answer any question, and they wanted everybody to get better. They wanted everybody to improve. They weren't worried about their spot on the show and protecting it. They wanted everybody to get better. And we were the only place that was running weekly. Then we were running twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Then we were running, the quad shots in Indiana, where we were doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We were running triple shots, quad shots, double shots. I mean, over 1,000 shows in IWA MidSouth history, and nothing against the federal, the promotions running today, but they're running one show every 2 months. So many of them are, and the young guys cannot get the reps and the in-ring time to improve when you're only working once every 2 months. And if you're only working the same 5 guys, because each promotion gets their like 10 guys that they use, and then that's it. That's all they're using. They're not bringing in, you're not getting Samoa Joe. You're not getting Aries. You're not getting, Roderick Strong. You're not getting B-Boy. You're not getting Super Dragon being flown across the country. And like, you just don't have that super indie feel that IWA Mid-South was providing back then. So like the whole thing that made us special is we were doing something that nobody else was doing at the time. And we were giving the platform to the next generation. And you're like seeing, like you mentioned, they're the ones that they're the ones running the business now and that are the biggest stars. And I know there's been times where on WWE television, like every one of their champions at one point was like IWA guys. And I wish I had kept the photo, but I know there was like at one time it was like Punk was a champion, Seth Rollins was a champion, Cesaro, I guess was his name at the Claudio Castagnoli. Cesaro was a champion. Matt Seidel was in a tag team.
Yep, with
Champion
Kofi,
is like
I think.
with like Evan Bourne or whatever his
Yep.
name was, but it was like every champion pretty much made their name and their start in the business in IWA and had been through IWA, and they all took a photo together with their belts and stuff. And I wish I still had that. And then like I know WWE ran, I think it was a show in Japan. They ran the finals of the 2004 TPI on one of their shows, and they did the Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, American Dragon 3-way. And I'm pretty sure it was a Japan show that they did, but they're running a match that we had done at that point a decade earlier, and it was like the fact that the shows were so diverse and you got to work every style and you got to work so much, it just made everybody better because you can train every single day. You can be in the gym every single day. You can go to your wrestling school and work at your wrestling school every single day. But if you're not in front of a crowd in a ring doing it where it counts, there's no replacing that. You're not going to get that knowledge. You're not going to get that feel for it. And the fact that the way Ian would do it on the shows is, okay, Punk, you're winning Pepsi Plunge 8 minutes. Everything else is up to you. Figure it out, put it together, call it in the ring, do whatever. And and then we would do the lethal lottery shows where it was a shoot. The fan would pull a name out of the bucket and you'd go to the ring. And then they'd pull the second name out of the bucket and Ian and go, you're winning in 5 minutes. Don't care how. Get out there and do it. And with no notice, no nothing, you're just going to the ring, calling it on the fly. And that experience was invaluable for
Yeah,
those guys. And again, nothing against the guys that are doing it now, but when I'm in the locker room now and the guys are going over the match 800 times before they go out there and they change it each time they go over it, they've changed something. And then they get out in the ring and they've one guy's got the first version, the eighth version, the 14th version, and the 20th version in his head, and the other guy's got the sixth version, the 12th version, the 19th version, and they're out there like having issues because they're not on the same page because they went over it to death and confused themselves in the back. And it's like, just make it easy on yourself. But they don't have that experience to fall back on that the guys were getting in IWA Mid-South 20 years ago with the way that we were doing things. And that's what makes it special. And people will scoff at you know, we were the main, but like I said, nobody was running. Ring of Honor wasn't running as much as we were back then. They were drawing more. They were in a market that had a hell of a lot more people than, Charlestown, Indiana has, that Clarksville, Indiana has. So they were able to, they had a millionaire backing them. So they had, you know, better setup, better lights, better, you know, whatever. But we were the ones running all the shows and giving the guys the experience. And then they'd come and take them when they felt that they were ready. And they would move on up, and then they'd move on up, and then they move on up. And eventually they're main eventing WrestleManias, and that's the course, that's the trajectory that they should be taking.
definitely. I kind of alluded to the fact that like it seemed like at a point in probably the early to mid 2000s where guys had to go to IWA to make a name for themselves, to make a name for themselves in this business in general. Do you feel like that was at ever a topic of conversation or something that was necessary for a guy's career to make it to a bigger stage?
I'm not going to say that it was necessary because there was definitely people that
Did it other ways?
for that did it other ways.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be that much of a arrogant bastard on here and be like, you couldn't have made it without coming through IWA and then having somebody give me 10 names
Hmm.
that didn't do it. But I can tell you that guys were begging to be on shows. Guys were cutting in deals on their prices that nobody else was getting.
Okay.
You know, you think Eddie Guerrero's working 3 times and getting, the 3-4 times he came in for IWA. You think he's asking top price? No, he's cutting Ian a deal because he knows Ian,
Yeah.
and he wants to be on that show. And like guys, like say constantly, we were getting flooded with if people were asking, can you get my friend? Can you get my friend? Can you get like everybody wanted to come through. And it wasn't because of Ian Rotten. Maybe it wasn't because of the IWA name per se, but it definitely was because Smart Mark Video was selling dozens upon dozens of DVDs worldwide. And, these guys were then getting booked in Germany, getting booked in Japan, getting booked in Australia, getting booked all over the United States because of the matches that they were doing in IWA that people were seeing on the DVDs and the VHS tapes that Smart Mark Video was selling and getting the word out there. So everybody wanted to end up on one of those tapes so that they could be seen and have that chance to go into other places. So I would say it was very vital to get onto an IWA show because that was the quickest way that you could get eyeballs on you and prove your worth because you're going to be in there with the top talent. Like, Ring of Honor wasn't running Samoa Joe versus Roderick Strong until IWA did it. They weren't running Samoa Joe versus Austin Aries until IWA did it. They wouldn't even have considered Samoa Joe versus Necro Butcher until we did it. And then everybody's like, "Oh, well, now we want to do that match. We want to do that match." And now you're getting a Dark Side of the Ring episode on Samoa Joe Necro Butcher because of how famous the match is. When it was like laughed, I think the trailer even showed it. The Ring of Honor fans laughing about that match when it was brought up on their message board. And then everybody wanted it after they actually saw what it looked like in practice after we did it at the ECW arena. So it was like everybody wanted to be on the shows. Everybody wanted to have that opportunity because Ian would give them that chance. Was anybody else in 2002 going to bring in Rey Mysterio Jr. and Eddie Guerrero for CM Punk? No.
No.
Not until Ian gave him that opportunity, and then he knocked it out of the ballpark. And then all of a sudden he's feuding with Raven, and he's feuding with this guy, and feuding with this, and his career took off. It was his work, it was his ability, but it was the opportunity that we gave him that nobody else was giving at that point. You know, and the fact that Ian would bring in these guys and put them against everybody. Mean Mitch Page got Spike Dudley. The rugby thug Trent Baker got Road Dogg. He got Supernova. He got like a lot of the feds, they'd bring in one guy would get all of the names. But with IWA, 10 different guys were getting the names. Chris Hero was getting Jerry Lynn. Suicide Kid was getting Jerry Lynn.
Okay.
And so everybody wanted to have their opportunity to get that, get that chance to be seen and get their name out there. So sure, there was, John Cena never came through IWA Mid-South. Randy Orton never came through IWA Mid-South. There's guys The Rock never came through. But more times than not, if you look at a guy that came up from 99 to 2005, if they came up on the independents in that time frame, 90% of them that you've heard of came through IWA at some point and had it as an experience. So, it was definitely vital in that regards.
You mentioned Dark Side of the Ring, and I don't think we've ever gotten an in-depth IWA Mid-South episode. Do you
No,
think that is something that could ever happen?
I every year they do their tweet at the end of the season. Who do you want to see next season? And I'm
Hmm.
like, by God, there needs to be an Ian Rotten episode. Uh, Dark Side of the Ring was made
Yes.
to tell Ian Rotten's story. That's what it's for, and do it. And they've been sticking to the bigger names. I thought when they did Nick Gage,
Hmm.
I thought, okay, that's going to open up the door. The Nick Gage episode got traction, and they saw that people actually watched it when he was, just an indie guy, and they saw that it got the numbers. So it's possible. I was like, that's going to open up the door. Now they're going to do it. And it did happen. Why they landed on Samoa Joe versus Necro Butcher, I don't know. Like so many of us with the IWA ties, we're all like, what's the dark side
Of this match.
of that? I I don't I don't know. Um, I know they didn't reach out to me. They didn't reach out to Nick Manawa, so we have no idea what's on the episode. From what we do know from Dave Prazak, with what little he could tell us, like Prazak is the voice, the IWA side on the episode. Um, Through the trailers, we've seen okay, Pondo, Necro, Eddie Kingston, Samoa Joe, the Ring of Honor students that Necro beat up at the Chikara show. I guess they're on there, but from my understanding is like nobody would do it if Ian was involved. So they left Ian out, and then Prazak was the you're gonna be the voice for IWA if you want to do this kind of thing is how I understand it.
Okay.
We'll see how it plays out on Tuesday when it airs. I'm definitely going to pull it up, and I'm going to be rooting for huge numbers for it. The views are astounding on their tweets about it so far that I've seen, and I'm retweeting it every time it comes into my timeline. I'm retweeting it to try to pump up the numbers on it and try to get the word out there because if it gets a good review and if it gets a good rating, you know, nothing against Jeff Jarrett, the man's a legend, but if you're going to do 3 episodes on Jeff Jarrett, you need to do 40 on Ian because
Yes.
there's a hell of a lot more there than
Yep.
than what they just did on a damn TNA episode, 3-parter for that. It's like it's stories that need to be told. So hopefully hopefully this one does great and they decide, you know what? We're going to do we're going to do a proper one and do it on IWA. If you don't want to do it on Ian, do it on IWA and whatever. But there's a lot to be told. There's a lot of opportunities that they have to just blow people's minds with some of the stories that could be told as the things that have happened. They've got 40 episodes of Fannon's flashbacks uh, come next week when the number 40 airs. They'll have 40 episodes worth of stuff that on almost every episode it's laughing. It makes me laugh how almost every week guys that lived it will reach out to me and be like, I didn't know that. That's new to me. Wow, I didn't know that. And it's like every week the guys are like learning something new and they're like, wow, I this and it just keeps going. And every time a new person comes on, they got a new thing that like, wow, we didn't know that happened to you. And you know, so I'm not joking when I say they could do 40 episodes and probably not even scratch the surface on all the material that's out there to do it. So I've done several podcast appearances this week trying to hype people up, like go watch it, make them think that this is stories that are going to be good for Vice TV, and when that happens, guys, reach out to me. You've got a whole catalog worth of material to go through in my archives, and I'll talk your ear off as you're seeing right now. I'll talk your ear off about it. You'll have plenty of episode material.
It's like I told you off air, like I grew up watching IWA East Coast, and then I did see like through the internet and things like that, a lot of MidSouth. So like I'm a huge fan of the IWA topic. So like for me, I just seeing a Dark Side of the Ring episode would be just it'd be intriguing because I the one thing I like about Vice's Dark Side of the Ring is I wouldn't say like, but I find it interesting how they spin things. Not always do I like it, but sometimes just how
Right,
they go about telling the story is interesting, and the aftermath is almost as good as the the episode usually. Whenever guys come out and they're like, "I didn't do that," or "I didn't say that," or "It didn't happen quite like that."
right.
It's always like Vice always finds a way to kind of stir the pot in the wrestling world, which I like with IWA. I'm sure it'd open up so many cans of worms.
Oh, yeah.
It would set the wrestling world on fire, and I think it would bring a lot of just awareness to what IWA really looked like behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
it would be intriguing. I think people would watch it and it would blow their minds. Um,
Definitely. You know, we've alluded a lot to you being a part of a lot of men's careers throughout your wrestling journey. You've mentioned CM Punk and Eddie Kingston, um, Ian Rotten, Pondo, just to name a couple, Chris Candido. For you getting to be a part of these guys' careers, whether you're managing them, whether you're helping behind the scenes, promoting, booking, what have you. How does it feel for you knowing that you got to be a part of all these men's journeys, good or bad? Like, what does that look like for you, just being able to soak that in?
I mean, I take great pride in it, and it's one of the things that got me to come back uh, this year, and it was the most rewarding part of what we were doing. You know, is seeing, you know, the first day Eddie Kingston came into IWA, he walked up to me and he said, "When are you going to start managing me? I want you to manage me." And I take pride in that. That, you know, the guys want to work with me, and I told Eddie, "Well, let's see what you got." And I could tell that he had it, and I'm like, let's run with it. Let's And first opportunity we got, we put him into the Fannin family and we ran with it. And so the fact that I can look back and know that I just played a small role in him, and it's more rewarding to see like him finally get his flowers, you know, and finally get his chance and his opportunity to shine, and for people to see him on AEW. I mean, that means the world to me because I know how hard he worked and how deserving he is to have that spot. And like I say, just to know that I had an inkling of something to do with it is makes me beam with pride every time I see him. And to just tell a quick story, last, I guess, Squared Circle Expo 2025.
Okay.
My best friend loves those things. His basement is just nothing but autographed football helmets, autographed baseballs, and autographed like 8x10 photos and wrestling figures. His entire basement's just filled with it. Goes to goes to any autograph signing that he can get to, um, for the major sports and for wrestling. And so he loves things like the Squared Circle Expo. Went with him because Cash Flow was supposed to be there.
Hmm.
And Cash Flow is another one that I managed, feuded against him. I was his first fan from his very first match because I knew him when he was doing security. He would park himself right at the front row in front of me and my friends, and we would talk all show and ask him how the training was going and how close he was to making his debut. And like, we cheered him nonstop from the moment that he had his first match. And I'd bring signs that said, you know, he would do this amazing, like he could do this flip elbow drop where you just stand there and do this flip and land in a perfect elbow drop. So every week I'd have a sign: cash flow plus flip elbow equals victory. And for 4 months, he lost every week before he finally got his first win in IWA. But I still like cheered him on through it all. And then the fact that I got to manage him, and now that he's getting his flowers and getting to star with Sylvester Stallone and Tulsa King, that is just so awesome. And I was like, I gotta go see Cash Flow and just give him a hug and see him, because I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And like right before the event, they're like, oh, Cash Flow is not going to be able to make it. Tulsa King changed their filming schedule, not going to be able to make it. And I'm like, well, damn it, I've got these admission tickets to get in. I've already told my friend I'd ride with him over to Indianapolis to go. So like the other name I'd worked with that I knew was going to be there was Claudio. And I'm like, great. I'll at least get to see Claudio. That'll be fun. And Claudio couldn't remember me. Had no clue who I was. And he's like, who are you? And I'm like trying to explain it. And he was like, I don't know. And then like that devastated me. But this year, Kingston was going to be there, and I was making my return. Like my return, the first night was for Black Label Pro at the Squared Circle Expo, and Kingston was supposed to be there the next day. And I'm like looking forward to it. Got worried because then Kingston got booked for Canada like on the Friday night. And I'm like, oh man, is he going to make it from Canada to Indianapolis for this? Is this going to be the second year in a row? And then part of me is worried and going, well, shit, what if he's like Claudio and he doesn't remember me? But not that Tom Green. We talked about off air, going to be the guest for episode 40. The night before at my comeback, his son got the chain that I tried to use in the match. Nate Webb took it and gave it to him, gave it to his not that Tom Green's son. And so then he's like posting a picture with Eddie Kingston the next day, and his son's got the chain on, and he like makes a comment where he's like, Eddie Kingston was over the moon to hear that Jim Fannin was back in wrestling. And I was like, well, he remembers me. Holy shit. And so like I raced from the hotel that I was staying at to get over to the Squared Circle Expo, and I'm looking all over for Eddie, and Eddie sees me before I see him, and he just comes running up and gives me this bear hug. And he was like, I am so glad that you got back into this. I'm so happy to hear that. And that like meant the world to me, that he remembered. And even CM Punk, I worked for the Chicago Cubs 2011 to 2015. I was doing security for Chicago Cubs during the games. And like I was trying to tell people that I was working with that, I worked with CM Punk, I worked with this guy, I worked with that guy. And I think they thought I was like full of crap, and they're like, okay, whatever. And so Punk was coming to sing the seventh inning stretch at a game. And my supervisor was like, I'm going to take you over to the press box so you can say hi to him, since you ain't seen him in forever. And I think he was just wanting to see, oh, is CM Punk going to actually
calling your bluff?
He's calling my bluff, And like CM Punk comes down the stairs from the press box to walk out, and he like stares at me, and you could see like the hamster wheels moving a little bit, but he's like going, nah, it can't be, there shouldn't be any reason that we're running into each other in a Cub game. And he like spins back around, and he was like, comes back, he was like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I work here now. And I showed him the name, like, hey, here's the name badge. I work here now. And he like, it was when they were filming the DVD documentary thing that the Best in the World DVD that they put out.
Yeah.
They were like in the process of filming that. So they filmed him doing the seventh inning stretch. He just like grabs me, and the camera guy's there, and he's like, start rolling. And the camera guy puts the thing up, and he's like, this is Jim Fannin, and he ran the company, IWA MidSouth where I got my start, and like puts me over like $1 million in my. You would have needed a forklift to pick the jaw up off the ground of the supervisor that was calling my bluff, and he was like, "Holy crap, you were telling the truth," and I'm like, "Yeah, I was telling the truth." And then I was like king after that around there, and kind of deal. So it's like great when they remember you. It's devastating when they forget you, but you know it's very rewarding to know that you had just a little bit, that all the things that Punk had done since he left IWA Mid South, because at that point it was 8-9 years since he had been gone and hadn't seen me, and remembered me, put me over in front of my coworkers, and like made me that day. Like I ruled the place after that for the longest time, because they were like, and then they would like try to like get me to introduce them, and I'm like, absolutely not. That's the easiest way to get onto the blacklist with him. So no, you'll just have to be happy to just know somebody who knows somebody. How
Pretty
about that
much.
kind of deal with it? So yeah, it's the most rewarding part, is to know that I helped out some guys along the way, and that they still remember and appreciate it.
Definitely. So when we started the podcast, I referred to you as the manager of champions, which you are known as.
Yes.
What moment in your career do you think really solidified you as just that, the manager of champions?
It's hard to pick a moment. I mean, it's a moniker I gave myself, kind
Okay.
of kind of so it I had 6 different guys. I led to 8 different IWA Mid South title reigns. Then I managed Jimmy Jacobs after he was already the champion. Then I managed Dingo after he was already the champion. So I had 8 IWA Mid South heavyweight champions. Had Jay Prodigy, managed him to the light heavyweight title twice. Managed Danny Daniels to the 2003 TPI championship. Managed BJ Whitmer to the 2003 Strong Style championship. So it was like, I mean, it storyline wise, it made sense that I have the championship is in the Fannin family in some form or fashion, and that we're the best. We're at the top, and I think the first two titles was Ian, and I was managing Ian at the time, so like I don't even can't even count that when the promoters, when the owner is the champion, it's like, yeah, that doesn't really mean much. When I managed Roland Hard to the title and beat Ian, like that meant something, but I mean, not manager of champions at that point. But then when I got Rugby Thug twice to the title, and then Chris Hero, and then Danny Daniels after that, it was like that run, the 01, like outside of CM Punk having the title, like the title ran through me and my stable
Okay.
from like 01 to 03, even into 04, because then BJ. So it was like almost like a succession of the main title holders. It went Rugby Thug to Chris Hero, then CM Punk owned it, which was not me, but then it ends up on going back to Chris Hero, and then Danny Daniels takes it from Chris Hero, and BJ Whitmer has it, and it just stayed in like for 3 years outside of just transitions. It came through me, so it felt like that solidified the manager of champions tag for me. Um, but then there was like a quite a dry spell before I got hooked up with Dingo again later. But then he became the longest reigning IWA champion of all time. So that like pretty much brought it to the forefront again, where yeah, I've got the champion. So I would say somewhere in that '01 to '03, '04 time frame. And that area was like when it really stuck that my my moniker was making sense and was deserved
Yeah,
at that point.
makes sense. And like in doing research, I realize you've been in and or around the ring with some of the like biggest names in this industry. I mean Dusty Rhodes, Terry Funk, Tracy Smothers, who I love to death. I've met Tracy a couple times. Tracy's amazing.
One of a
Um,
kind.
for you, what was it like just being around those minds that you've probably grew up watching, and then also just being able to learn from them and to soak things in from them?
Yeah, so being in the ring with Dusty Rhodes, like nothing is going to even come close to touching that in my life. Um, Dusty Rhodes was my dad's favorite wrestler, and the relationship that I had with my dad, we would have to, outside of the Cubs at the time, Cubs and Bears, that those were like the only two things where we rooted for the same thing. We would like intentionally root against each other on everything. So like Dusty Rhodes was his guy, so Ric Flair was mine, and it went that way. And so like I said, Dusty Rhodes was his favorite, and to be in the ring and to get a bionic elbow from him, like Ian yelled at me after the show. He's like, "You're grinning from ear to ear as Dusty Rhodes is giving you the bionic elbow." And I'm like, just shut up. It's never happening again. It's the coolest moment of my life. Of course I'm going to be smiling. All right. And then I didn't have as much appreciation at the time for Terry Funk because the only real experience I had of watching Terry Funk was the '89 run with Flair.
Yeah.
And so I thought he was awesome and I thought he was great. And it wasn't until later after I started watching more of him and the way that he was when he came into IWA, like cemented it where, I mean, Terry Funk's the greatest ever now, when, if you ask me. But that Dusty at the time, the Dusty, like nothing's gonna top being in the ring with Dusty Rhodes and having that experience. And like I said, if you'd have told 10-year-old me that, get ready, because you know, in 2004, when you're 28 years old, you're going to get a bionic elbow. I'd have been like, you're nuts. There's like one, Dusty Rhodes ain't going to be delivering bionic elbows 18 years from now. It sure as hell ain't going to be to me, but it was, and it happened. And the fact that I've got that moment, it's something I'll cherish forever. And then the next month, Terry Funk comes in. And then Terry Funk just feeds right into the persona. And he comes up like, I'm one of the first people that he sees. He comes up and I heard that yellow egg sucking dog, Dusty Rhodes, was here. What did he do? And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. He just called Dusty Rhodes a yellow egg sucking dog in a one-on-one conversation with me when there's like no cameras, no nothing. And he's calling Dusty Rhodes a yellow egg sucking dog. This is fantastic. And so I'm like going, well, Dusty Rhodes, he brawled all over the building. He bled quite a bit. He gave me the bionic elbow, you know, whatever. And then Terry Funk's like, I know what I need to do. And he walks away. And then later in the night, after he like talks with Ian and hears the storyline and how things are going and realizes that I'm the Bobby Heenan role and I'm like the main bad guy and whatever, he just comes up to me and he goes, "What do you do, kid?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what do I do?" I run my mouth and then I get the taste slapped out of my mouth. And it's like, what are you going to do to me? That's what we need to be going over right now. And he's like, you said Dusty Rhodes gave you the elbow last month. He's like, you lost that match. You're losing tonight. You need to do something to me. You need your heat. You're the one that needs to stay the top bad guy when I leave. It's like, I'm not coming back. We need to get you over. What do you do? And I'm like floored. I'm like, what do you, I don't want to do anything. I want you to pile drive me. Give me a pile driver. And he's like, no, we're getting you over. We're getting your heat back. What are you going to do to me? And I was like, okay, well, at the time I got a briefcase. What if I just hit you with the briefcase? And he's like, do that. And it just blew my mind that a legend, a man that people considered the greatest of all time and worshiped, and he's worried about getting me over and letting me have a chance to shine. And it just blew me out of the water. And after that, it like changed the way that I thought about things and how I looked at things. And it was no longer like, what's in it for me? It became, what can I do for others going forward from that? And, it was just something that was just amazing to see come from Terry Funk. And I mean, he may have been like that all the time. And the way people rave about him, he probably was. But to have that experience just blew me away and skyrocketed him up my rankings after that he was so gracious with what with his name
Yeah.
and what he was willing to give. And like Tracy Smothers was the first. I've told the story on my podcast. Zero training. Zero training. Was just put out there and told, run your mouth like you do all the time. Just do it. And had zero training, hadn't taken one bump, had nothing. And I get put out in the ring, and Bull Payne is told, power bomb me. No one went over what I'm supposed to do on a power bomb. I just think it's all just natural motion. And I almost give Bull Payne a hernia because he's like, how heavy are you? Jesus Christ. And he's like struggling to pick me up on this thing. And then he just drops me. And I drop it. And it was almost an exact copy of like when Kevin Nash dropped Big Show on his head in WCW because he couldn't get him up high enough for the power bomb. And, and I thought I was first night in the ring, and I think I'm dead. And I couldn't feel anything. I was like, damn, I'm going to be paralyzed like my dad. And I thought, I was like, how am I going to tell this to my grandmother? How am I going to explain that this has happened? But then like, luckily the feeling started coming back, and I was like, all right. And Bull's like yelling at me, like, what the hell? And I'm like, I've never been trained. I didn't know what to do. And he's like, then why did you do that? Like, why did you let me powerbomb you? And I'm like, I trusted you. I thought it would just be, I thought it was just a natural thing that, I didn't know I had to like sit up myself on it. I just thought, oh, well, when you flip me like that, I'm just naturally going to end up in the proper position. No, I am supposed to help you do that. No. And instead I'm just like, he's like dying. But Tracy Smothers was like the first one to like sit there, and he sat me down because I cut a promo again. I was managing Rugby Thug against him. So I'm 4 years into the business, and the first like actual sit down training moment given to me comes from Tracy Smothers because I cut a promo that called him an old man. And Tracy got into the back and he pulled me aside, and he was like, I know Ian just threw you out there and that you haven't been formally trained and you don't know what you're doing, and that's fine. He's like, but don't ever call your opponent an old man. And I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, do you know why? And I said, no, sir. And he goes, if you beat me, you just beat an old man. Who cares? You just belittled everything that your guy did. But if I beat you, you just lost to an old man. you're done. You're garbage. It's like, don't ever do it. He's like, call me this, call me that, but don't ever call me an old man. He's like, I may be old, but don't ever say it because then you put it in the fans' mind. And he goes, then I'm done. You're done. Nobody accomplishes anything. And I was like, wow, that,
Makes a lot of
and,
sense.
and then I take that with me now and I can't watch a college football game or a college basketball game and hear like the home crowd, their team's about to upset the number one team in the country, and the entire stadium's chanting overrated. Well, now your team just did nothing. The team that, that number one team that you guys just beat is overrated. So what's the big deal that you just won? No big deal at all.
Nope.
You just belittled everything that you guys just accomplished by chanting overrated at them. And it was like such a learning moment that you could take into other areas of your life, and it was in like, but Tracy was the first one to take the time to sit there and go, I'm going to teach you something. And, and then it was like, well, pull up that chair and what else can I learn from you? Kind of thing. And so having those guys on the show were just, they were godsends because they would help everybody. And if somebody, Tracy and them, if somebody asked them, will you watch my match and give me pointers? They never said no. They were always more than happy to do it. And that's what you want out of the veterans in the locker room. That's what you want. You don't want the people that are scared they're going to lose their spot if they get somebody too good. No, Tracy's like, do this, do that. Let's work on this, and I'll get in the ring with you, and I'll show you this, and I'll show you that. And I mean, he was the best. He was the absolute best to be around.
I think in doing this, I believe this is episode 240,
Okay.
and everybody has said the exact same thing about Tracy Smothers. Like might be one of the best like
Yeah,
just
if somebody
people
says something
ever in
bad
the
about
business.
Tracy Smothers, they're lying.
It's them. They were the problem.
They are the problem. If they have a problem with Tracy Smothers, they are the problem
Absolutely.
because Tracy was the best.
I I don't recall specific moments because when I saw Tracy, I was probably 5 or 6 years old. But I just remember any time we had an interaction, he was always just the funniest guy in the room. Always dancing, always playing. Obviously, I'm a member of the crowd. I'm a kid, so he's probably playing it up. But there was never a bad interaction with Tracy Smothers. I probably had 15 of his autographs on this little belt because I remember he never made us pay for him. And usually that's
Yeah.
how it was at IWA, like East Coast shows. I don't think I ever paid for an autograph. Everybody in there just was happy to
Right.
sign anything,
Yep.
ready. And back then you didn't have your phone, like you had
Right.
phones, but they didn't have the pictures on them, so you had the ones with the film,
Yeah. The
um,
Polaroids.
the Polaroids. So we did those, and like I
The
remember
Polaroids would be charged because it's
it
using the film, but
was
yeah, otherwise
it
most
was
of those
great.
shows the guys would just
Anything. It's so giving. I
yeah.
think that's something like I realize, I mean, obviously everybody needs to make money in this business now, and it's like it might be easier now, but in some ways it's harder at the same way. So like I get having a merch stand and the guys needing to make their money, but I remember as a kid, a, usually an autograph didn't cost you anything, and it was rare a picture did, and part of me wishes it was still like that, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, we're always nostalgic for the way things were, and you
Yes,
know, but like you said, it's a lot of the guys.
that's how they make their money.
That's how they're making any money at all.
Yes,
You
that's how they
know
get gas back and
yeah,
forward.
that's how they're getting their gas money.
I get it.
That's how they're getting the burger after the show and stuff like that is through that merch. So I understand it,
I get it.
but yeah, if somebody comes up to you with a piece of paper and
Yeah,
asks you to sign it, I mean, it's crazy when you got some of them like, nope, yeah, it's
$30.
$30. Now I'll do that if I go into a store and I have to sign the credit card slip. My go to is always like whatever the amount is. So like if the item I'm having to sign the credit card bill is like $36.05, I'll always go, what a coincidence. I charged $36.05 for my autograph. And the person will be like, nope, 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 just sign it. And
That's funny.
like, okay,
I like
but
it.
so you can doesn't happen often anymore. There's not too many places to make you sign the receipt. So I don't get to use it as often as I used to, but
You know, in this we've talked about you leaving IWA, but we haven't really broke it down. What
okay.
what made you decide to make that decision to part from wrestling?
I was miserable,
Okay.
absolutely miserable. Um, Probably from the time that Chris Candido passed away in early '05 until the time I left in August of '09, that 4 year period, I did not want to be there. Did not want to be there. There was just a lot going on in my personal life was not where I wanted it to be. And I just did not like, I knew I wasn't going to get paid. No matter what was told to me ahead of time, I knew that there was no way I was going to get paid and that I was just losing money. And I knew that if there was somebody to pick up from the hotel, I knew I wasn't going to get gas money. Or if I had to pick them up at the airport, I knew I wasn't getting gas money. I knew I was going to have to pay for a hotel room to put the person at, and that I was not going to see any of that money. And it just, I did not, I did not want to be there, but I didn't want to quit.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a quitter. And I, at least for a while, still enjoyed what like the performance part of it, but I was just miserable. And it was just a lot of stress. And then it got to the point where, like, especially towards like 2008, 2009, I would just get to the building at the latest I could possibly get there, sit away from everybody, not talk to anybody, do what I was supposed to do, and then I'd be the first one out the door. And it was like I just could not interact with Ian anymore. I it was one of those where like every time my phone rang, I'd get a sick feeling in my stomach. Like, what's going to be asked of me now? What's going to be asked of me now? Because it was always, you know, oh, I some bullshit story. I knew that he had lost the fucking money at the boat, and but he'd give me some sob story. Oh well, I just haven't been feeling well, and time got away from me, and I didn't get that airplane ticket, and now it's 2 days before the show, so the airline ticket's 8 times more expensive than what it was if I would have gotten it 3 weeks ago when I said I was going to get it.
Yep.
And like, I can't have another show where the main guy is a no show. Can you please get the airplane ticket? And I swear to God, this time, as soon as like no money will get paid out to anybody else until you get that money back on this airline ticket. And it would just constantly be crap like that. And I
Mhm.
just sit there and like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be put in that position. I don't, because every time it would always be the same. I do it. And then 25 people would buy a ticket to the show, and I'd be sitting there going, well, there's not even enough to cover the airline ticket, and I'm not going to make 25 wrestlers that you booked on this show leave empty-handed so I could get partial of my airline ticket back. And I just tell him, make sure the guys get something. And it just kept happening over and over and over and over again. And he would just keep doing the same stupid things. And I had finally like got my personal life in a better position, and I was getting ready to get married, and my wife could not, like, for 2 hours after I'd get off the phone with Ian, she would not want to even be in the same room as me because of my how my mood would just change.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You got to get out of this. We cannot get married and make this work if you keep doing this. You're gonna ruin yourself." And like at the around that time, they had not sent out so many shipments of DVD orders and T-shirt orders and stuff that had come in, where he'd lose the money at the boat, and then he'd have no money to ship the stupid items, and then he wouldn't want to ship the items because he'd want to try to sell them at the next show so he could, have a little bit of money to go back to the boat. And it's like, I can't deal with this. So like their PayPal got shut off, and there wasn't like cash out or anything else. So like they would have to have people then send the payment to my wife's PayPal because they had already gotten my PayPal shut off by not sending items. And so then they get my wife's PayPal shut off by not sending items. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then it would be oh, well, can you go to your Walmart, and there was like some Walmart pay thing where I could like almost like Western Union, but he was like blackballed from Western Union and couldn't use Western Union anymore. So I had to like go to Walmart and use their version of whatever the Western Union was to try to get him money so he could, you want James Christopher, your godson, to be able to eat, right? And so I'd have to sit there and go send him this damn money in, or go buy me, he'd have like a burner phone from Walmart that you'd have to buy the minutes for.
Hmm.
Like, go buy me 200 minutes on my phone so I can actually make calls to book people. And I'm like, I just, like I said, it would just, my stomach would sink, and I would be in the darkest of places that I could possibly be every time my phone rang, because I knew if the phone was ringing, I knew it was going to be him asking for some kind of a favor. And like, just like how I said, it was happenstance and chance that I got into it. My phone stopped work. Like the charger stopped working on my phone, would not charge. And it was at a point where like my phone wasn't upgradable yet for the free upgrade.
Hmm.
And I couldn't afford, because he'd been draining me dry, and I'm trying to save for a wedding and everything else. I couldn't afford to just pay for a phone. So I was like 1 month away from the free upgrade. And so I had a conversation with him, and I'm like, my phone is about to die. I cannot fix it for a month. Next month, I get a new phone. I'll talk to you then. And that month was like the greatest month of my life. That phone wasn't ringing. He couldn't get a hold of me. Easy to avoid an email. Be like, oops, sorry, accidentally deleted that.
Yep.
Didn't see it. Thought it got mixed in with the spam. Oh, sorry, didn't see it. And like he'd have Mickey reach out to me. He'd have Nick Manawa reach out to me, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't get any of those messages. I'm sorry. And then I'd like send a a BS laden email about why I didn't see his other messages. And, oh, well, it's just a couple more weeks before I get that new phone. And when I went in to get the new phone, the thought hadn't even crossed my mind, but the salesman was like, well, do you want to keep your same number or do you want a new number? And I was like, oh my God, give me a new number. Give me a new number. And so they gave me a new number. And I told Nick Manawa, do not give this number to him. I'm done. I was like, this is my chance to break away. I'm done. And and at that point, I was he knew that I was he knew that I was out of the business at that point. I had, he did one of his, this is the last show, and he did that in like '09, and it was about the eighth time that he had done it. And he knew I was quitting at the anniversary show. I was going to put over Jimmy Jacobs and like a loser leave town, I quit, whatever. Like there was going to be like 20 different stipulations on it to make it to where people thought that there might be some kind of a way that I would win, and that there would be a doubt as to like, oh well, who's gonna leave. And I was gonna just put over Jimmy Jacobs and be gone. And then 2 months before that show was supposed to happen, he did the I can't run any, like, we've lost too much money, I have no money, we're closing up. And I went to the ring and I said, this has happened before and you've come back. I'm telling you right now, you come back, you're doing it without me. I'm done. And, and I like pretty much like put the microphone down and left. I was like, so he knew I was done. But then, it was still do the PayPal stuff for him and do this and do that. And so it was like 2010-ish. It was either 2010 or 2011 where the phone thing happened. And I was like, change my number and never look back, and haven't spoken to him since.
So there
And
hasn't been any contact since then?
um at Nick Manawa's wedding in like 2014,
Hmm.
2013, 2014, Ian was there, and like guys would come up and talk to me during the reception after the wedding.
Hmm.
I was one of the groomsmen. And so like Mitch Page and Harry Palmer and some of the old IWA originals, would come up and talk to me because they hadn't seen me in years, and would talk to me. And then Ian would come up and stand beside me and try to get me to talk to him. And by this point, he had already, like, his ex-wife had already found out that he'd been cheating on her and with the woman that he's with now and everything. So they had already split. And every time he'd come up and stand next to me, I just go stand next to his ex-wife. It's like, you want to talk to me, you come up here. You have to interact with her too.
Yeah.
And so then he would just like walk away and go do whatever. And then I'd like decide to go get into another conversation with somebody. And then next thing I know, he's standing next to me, and I just go right back to Patty and stand next to Patty. And she's like, am I your Ian repellent? And I was like, thank God you are, because yeah.
If it
And
works, it works.
if it works, it works. And I did not say one word to him at that wedding. Um, we've had one email exchange since the 2011 thing. My grandma passed away around the same time that Axel passed away, and he sent me an email, and he's like, I don't know why you hate me, but I just wanted to say I'm so sorry your grandma passed. I knew how much she meant to you. And I emailed him back and I was like, it's not that I hate you. It's just we can't, like, we're cursed. I was like, we are the worst forms of each other when we're together. And I was like, no matter what happened, there was always a dark cloud that followed us around. And I was like, I can't have that in my life anymore. And I was like, I'm sorry Axel passed. Thank you for sending condolences about my grandmother, but I was like, this does not work anymore. Can't happen. and that was like the last interaction that I've had with him. And so that was like whenever it was that Axel passed away. But that was like the one an email exchange was like the one interaction that we've had. And I was like, that was, like I said, that was the greatest month of my life, where I didn't have to just sit all day dreading like, when's the phone call going to come, what he's going to. And then once I had changed my number and told everybody, like, I will cut you out of my life if you give him this phone number, do not do it. So I knew that I didn't have to worry. Like, the phone would ring and I'd be like, oh, is this my grandma? Oh, is this my aunt? Oh, is this my best friend? Like, oh, who's calling me? And it was like such a great feeling and a relief, and to not just to not have that constant dread in my life. And so that, like, that's what led to it. That's the story.
So, j just out of curiosity, um, technically, I want to say IWA Mid-South ended a couple years ago when Jake Christ did what he did to the title. What did you think of how things ended?
It's a good question. Um, when Jimmy Jacobs threw it threw the title in the trash, that was the worst thing that could have happened. Hated that. And so it led to the 4-year war. That was a legitimate war for the most part. Those emotions were real. And then once I got out and got away from it, it didn't mean as much. But just the fact of the way that it ended leaves a bad taste in the mouth. Title get burned. Ian once again besmirches the name of IWA Mid South. And part of the thing that I've done on my podcast is I'm trying to get people to differentiate between Ian Rotten and IWA Mid South.
Yeah,
IWA Mid South should not suffer because of the reputation of Ian Rotten. It's two separate things.
definitely.
Okay. And like the way that I've like tried to mention it, like Michael Jackson's movie comes out and you've got the reputation of being a child molester and everything that is in the background of Michael Jackson, but yet people still swoon over his music and they still make a big deal out of his music and they still file into the movie theater to watch a movie that doesn't even bring up the fact that he is a 1,000-time accused child molester. They just conveniently leave that part of the story out. And I guess maybe they're doing a part 2 or something to get more money out of people. And it might be in that one. Who knows? But people still do that. They always, when it's convenient to them, they can separate the art from the artist. And they can be like, well, I don't like you for this reason, but that movie you did was fantastic. Oh, Mike Tyson went to jail for raping that girl, but he was a hell of a boxer, and I'll go and pay for that autograph, and I'll laugh at him in that Hangover movie. He was kind of funny. We'll look over that part, and they do it for like all these other people, but then they want to take IWA Mid South down with Ian Rotten, and so I can understand Mr. Christ wanting to burn the title. I can understand that. Probably other ways that you could have gone about it, but maybe by burning that title, you keep him from being able to come back because he's not going to be able to afford to have another title made. But I think we're at the point that you don't have to really worry about what Ian Rotten's going to do because people won't work for him.
Yeah.
And I think I made the joke earlier, like off air. You can't do certain things when only five people will work for you,
Yeah.
you know? So I don't think we have to worry about Ian Rotten bringing back IWA. It's gone. That version is gone. But it lives on in me. It lives on in Nick Manoa. It lives on in Bull Payne. It lives on in Chris Hero. It lives on in everybody that held that title that's behind me on the bookcase. Everybody that took pride in their work, everybody that took pride in their matches. Go and look at the title history. One hell of a list of names on there.
Yeah.
Tracy Smothers, Sal Sincere, Bull Payne, Axel Rotten, Roland Hard, Mean Mitch Page, Madman Pondo, Corporal Robinson, CM Punk, Chris Hero, Rugby Thug, Petey Williams, Eddie Guerrero held that title. It's a hell of a legacy, one that shouldn't be forgotten, one that's not going to go away because somebody threw it in the trash, not going to go away because somebody burned it, not going to go away because Eric Cannon smashed it with a hammer because he was mad that Chris Hero had it. Eric Cannon, another one that's held the list of names that have held that belt, some of the best professional wrestlers of the last 25 years held that belt behind me. And I don't want people to think of it and have the last thing they think of it be it was set on fire because the asshole owner behind the company didn't pay the 500th different guy and owed him money on the show, and he took matters into his own hand and thought that that was what needed to be done. Um, so my thoughts are, Jake Chris, you did what you did. You had a reason for doing it. Wish you hadn't, because I don't want that legacy to be thought of in that way. And then, it makes me, especially now that I'm back in the business, and whether I like it or not, any show that I'm on, if somebody tries to explain who I am to their crowd, they can't do it without saying the letters IWA. Can't be done. And I don't want to be wiped out of history. I came back to make sure that I didn't get wiped out of history. So might force me to have to do some things to make sure that I don't get wiped out of history, make sure that that belt doesn't get wiped out of history, that those letters don't get wiped out of history, because one raging gambling aholic couldn't control himself and screwed over everybody in the business and left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But that shouldn't tarnish the work that 1,000 wrestlers put into that promotion and put into that company and put into that title. One guy shouldn't be able to spoil that. And that's how I feel on it.
Agree with you 100%. I think as a fan, it makes a lot of sense for somebody to be so passionate and also to want a different outcome for for something that should be beloved. I feel like a lot of people should be able to look back at the body of work that the men and women put forth inside that ring and not what one guy did behind the scenes to impair the reputation of the whole brand. Like
Right.
it's sad that you have, like you mentioned, guys like Eddie Guerrero, CM Punk, BJ, all these guys won this belt and it built a legacy and built a brand and built a company up from nothing and made it one of the, if not the top independent promotion at one point in time. And one guy was able to take that rug out from all of it for whatever reason. Um, and like I kind of said, the the end was kind of uncertain. So, who knows? Ian's, you can't say, never say never, I guess.
Right. With him, you can't. Yeah.
So I would just like to see, and it's the same with like I used to watch IWA East Coast, and I know they don't run anymore. And I don't know if it's just the name, but like that was my favorite thing as a kid was going to IWA shows as a kid. Like I watched Raw, I watched SmackDown, I watched TNA, but every month we'd go to Dunbar, West Virginia, or South Charleston, West Virginia, and we'd go watch Madman Pondo and Necro Butcher and New Jack and Axel and Ian Rotten. Uh, and it was I watching all the blood, the violence, and then you see guys like Chris Hero come through and Austin Aries and Roderick Strong, and you get legends like Billy Gunn and Tracy Smothers and all these guys coming through. It was really special. So like I just I hate that there's so like online discourse is always so negative. But you get guys like yourself, and like I've had Hollywood Haley J come on here, and she loved her time with IWA, and she spoke very like fondly of the company. Even Jimmy Jacobs, like having Jimmy on, he enjoyed his time with the company. He just wished things were different. And same with Jake. Like I talked to Jake Christ about it, and Jake, he loved the company. He just didn't like the man behind it. And
Right.
I feel like that's every like the wrestlers I can from what I've been able to gather can differentiate, but it seems like for some reason
The
as
fans can't.
fans can't. And I sometimes I wish fans would just get over it, to be honest.
Right.
If that makes sense. Um,
Right. There's
there's difference.
hundreds of IWA shows that Ian Rotten does not wrestle on. Watch those, appreciate those, love
Yes.
those. You know, um, if you don't like the hardcore, well, guess what? There's something called the Ted Petty Invitational that, you know, has the best wrestling in the world on it and launched many to superstardom. Watch that, appreciate that.
Definitely.
If you like the death matches, well, we got IWA had that coming out the wazoo. Plenty of choices to go and watch guys just do things that will give you nightmares if you let it. And and if you want Memphis, go watch Mark Wolf, Mitch Ryder. That's Memphis is that could have main evented in the MidSouth Coliseum if they were 10 years older and were able to get a run there. And guess what? We took damn near everybody from USWA in 1997, 1998, and was outdrawing that, running at the same time as they were running the Louisville Gardens and outdrawing them. And the guys would like open up at the Louisville Gardens and then drive over to the Kmart building and be in the later cards, or some of them would open on the IWA show and then go main event the Louisville Gardens card and crisscross each other on the road going from one building to the next. But you got to see Buddy Landell and Tracy Smothers and Doug Gilbert and PG-13. Everybody that was anybody in Memphis, minus Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher, everybody came through the IWA doors. So if you want Memphis, by God, it had it. Any style that you want to see, it was represented on an IWA Mid-South show. So anytime I see a fan that just wants to sit there and say it was a garbage promotion or oh, everybody just got paid with a handshake and a hot dog, or All the same lame jokes that have been told for 25 years. Wasn't funny 25 years ago, wasn't funny 10 years ago, wasn't funny 5 years ago, not funny today. You know, come up with a different insult, you know, and quit regurgitating word for word what Jim Cornette told you, because I can tell that you've never watched the product a day in your life, never seen it, won't look at it, but yet you think you're an expert on it because some guy that we outdrew and he got pissed off about it and wanted to run his mouth about it told you that that's what happened. We got a problem in this country today because there's a person that is like that, and mouth breathing morons follow line, fall in line and gobble up every word that the man says, when dumbest human being on the face of God's green earth, and people want to worship the ground he walks on. The wrestling fans that want to do that with Jim Cornette was a great manager. Smoky Mountain was a great promotion. But Jim Cornette in 2026, on a different planet, ladies and gentlemen. He's not living on planet Earth when he talks about professional wrestling today. And he wants to say that, IWA MidSouth was blood and guts. Ask him to run the tape of Chris Jericho damn near bleeding to death on his TV show in Smoky Mountain and ask him what's the difference. The difference is that made him money, but we were taking money out of his pocket. So we were bad. That was good. That's the difference. Okay. And if you can't decipher that in your little mind, then I don't know what to tell you. Remember to chew your food before you swallow. Remember to look both ways before you cross the street. And remember, open manhole cover you might fall into. These dangers are out there for you, and someone needs to remind you, don't befall them.
Was that a Jim Fannin promo?
It
I,
was
I liked it.
definitely a rant.
I liked it.
I am known for rants.
That's
That was my rant.
I would say we'd end it there, but I got one more question.
Okay.
Before I let you go, I've only seen you do your job one time in person. That was for Bloodstone Wrestling. I'm Not
Yes.
Okay, where you managed the great John Wayne Murdoch as he took on Anakin Murphy.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of Bloodstone Wrestling. As I mean, if anybody wants to go check out, I've done 2 interviews with Nick, the man behind the curtain. One on just the show I'm Not Okay, and then one with Nick on his personal life. Go check both of those out. Um, for you, just getting back in the business, trying to get back in the fold of things, being alongside John Wayne Murdoch, what was your experience like working with Bloodstone, and how did you feel coming out of the event?
I felt real sore because when I got into the ring at the end to try to get revenge on that hussy Davina Thorne for smacking me in the face, I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm blind as a bat without my glasses on. And I get into the ring and I put my hand down on a friggin' gusset plate and slice the hell out of my pinky. It's still not completely fully healed from the smoke. I have no idea how these guys are pounding these gusset plates into each other and hitting each other with these gusset plates next to being tossed barefoot off the top rope into the thumbtacks in a managing Necro Butcher against Corporal Robinson and Madman Pondo, when they pulled my shoe off and I jump up onto the top rope and they just throw me into the tacks. That was the worst pain that I had in my life at that point. Gusset plate on my pinky, getting into the ring, might have topped the thumbtacks to the bare feet. Might have topped it. It was right there.
That sucks.
And and like I'm standing on the floor, blood gushing out of my hand towards the end of that match, and I'm just watching all this. I It was so much blood that I could even see the blood on the floor. And I get into the back like afterwards, and Nick's like freaking out. He's like, "What did you do to your hand?" And I'm like, "I freaking put it on a damn gusset plate." And so go back and watch that, and you can see that nasty damn gusset plate sitting there, right in my way as I like far enough away from the ropes that I couldn't see it, and I get my big fat butt through underneath that bottom rope and put my hand right down on it. I was like, couldn't have been worsely timed. But other than that, it was an amazing experience. Loved it. To be back in Chicago for the first time in 18 years on a show felt amazing. And I had like 5 people that I work with that came out to the show, and it was all of their first time being at a wrestling show live. Um, they had only seen WWE in their life.
Okay.
They were blown away. And like I'm their boss. They got to like yell profanities at me as everybody was booing me, and they were like "F you, Fannin," and they thought that that was just the greatest thing in the history of their life that they were able to cuss out their boss, and there was like not
So
going to
no
get in trouble for
reprimand.
it, no reprimand, not going to get in trouble for it. They thought that that was just phenomenal, and it was it was such a great experience, and it was a fun show. The people were great to be around, and I had a blast. Nick's talked to me about doing future shows. I don't. He's like had me pencil in a date. I don't think he's announced the next show yet.
Not yet.
So I'm not going to like give a date that might change. Um, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to come back. I don't know if it'll be with Murdoch. I think the next show. I think the date was like Murdoch might be already booked somewhere else. So we've talked about things that could possibly be done, and there was a lot of talent on the show that I was impressed by, and always recruiting new members of the family. Um, like I said, trying to work with people. It's of course I'm going to feel more comfortable working with the people that I know,
Hmm.
and that was the main thing. Like it was a Nick did a huge favor to me without even knowing me. Like John Wayne Murdoch asked him, could I please be able to manage him? It was when I quit IWA, John Wayne Murdoch and Reed Bentley took over like my role. I was the flag waver of IWA. I was the cheerleader. I was the driving force behind it, like trying to rally the troops and let's do this. And nothing's better than IWA. And then I put the flag down and I walked away. And it was Murdoch and Reed Bentley that picked that flag up and carried it for the next generation. And they always talked with Nick Manawa going, any way humanly possible you think Jim would ever come back and manage us. We want that experience. And Manawa was like, don't hold your breath. But now that that other guy's out of the picture and we don't have to, go through him, it was like I had announced the comeback, gotten gotten in with Wrestle Arts, which is based out of Indianapolis, had gotten established there, trying to get back into the Chicago area and hopefully get my name out to some people here in my town that I don't have to drive 3 hours. Like love Wrestle Arts, but it would be nice to not have a 3 hour drive to go to a show.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, so Murdoch was like, "We'll if I can get him to do it, will you manage me? And I'm like, absolutely. If he puts me on the show, I'm there. Let's do this and get it knocked out. And then, because we wanted to be able to bridge the two eras of IWA Mid South, you know, and we were able to do that. And so it meant the world to me. And Nick didn't have to do that for me. Didn't have to do that for John Wayne Murdoch. I don't think had Murdoch worked for them. I mean, it was
No,
only what, like their third show or
this is the
something.
third one. Murdoch
Yeah,
hadn't
so
been
it
in
was like
one
their
yet.
third show, and like Murdoch hadn't worked, so he didn't have to do a favor for Murdoch and do that. But I think I did enough to impress Nick with the amount of effort I put into trying to hype the show and promote it and cry from the highest hills, like come out to this show. It's great. And I'm still like, within the last week, I've put posts out like, go watch this show on YouTube.
Yep.
It's a great show. Go watch it.
I
If you're
know.
listening to this pocket, go watch that show from Bloodstone. Great show. And the Anakin Murphy John Wayne Murdoch match, blow your mind.
It's great.
What they did was amazing. And go watch it just to you probably hate me now after I've like talked to you for hours here and you had to listen to my voice. Go watch Davina Thorne just smack the hell out of me. And the picture that they were able to get, and there,
Perfect.
there was so many different photographers. I can't remember which one did which, but there was I know there was Coin because I worked, he was a referee on IWA shows, so I know Coin.
Okay.
And, so I know him, and the other ones are slipping my mind off. I know one's like a Sling Blade photo, took
Yeah.
the promo photos for me and John. I know that she wasn't the one that did the one with the slap, but it was either Coin or it was the other guy. And
I'm slipping names too.
I'm mad that I can't remember his name, but he talked to me before the show and he was like, "You got mad at me at an IWA show because I had posted too much of a video, and Ian was mad that said people wouldn't buy the show because they could see the spot on my thing and on the video that I had posted, and so like you got mad at me over it, and I wish I could. Oh, I can't believe that this is what happens when you're like 50 years old, people, and you've been hit in the head a few times. You forget things. But, I think it was him, not Coin, that had the photo that was just perfectly timed. You can see my 8 chins just reverberating from the slap and the look on my face. And you could see like ripples in her as she like just hit me with everything she had. And I think I told her after the show, I was like, you should go do that. I think I called it by the wrong name because I'd never watched it. I think whatever I said, it was that slap show that just knocked out Jack Swagger. That was all over. I was like, you should go do that because you do some damage on that show. Because she smacked it. Go watch it just for that.
It's good. It you can hear it. I was across the arena because I was by the entrance way, and you was on the other side, and you can hear that.
Oh,
It's like a shotgun.
if you thought you could hear it, you should have felt it. You know, but you can see how it felt just by looking at the look on my face uh, in that photo. It was perfectly like one in a million shot that they landed it just right on that picture. But like Bloodstone blew me away. I was like, I wish they ran. I wish they ran every month.
Yeah.
I like any show they want me at, I'm there because it was a good time. Building was a little warm for this fat old man. I was like, it's a little
A little
toasty in
toasty.
here. It was a little toasty, but other than putting my hand down on a gusset plate and it being a little toasty, like that was it was I couldn't have asked for more
Definitely.
out of that. And so I hope that they want to bring me back. I'd love to be back. Um, would love to fill out my calendar and have like I don't want to be working every weekend. I think my wife would kill me if I was working every weekend, but you know, be nice to be nice to have some dates a little closer to home and not be getting back at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning by the time you get back. Um, but yeah, it Bloodstone is an amazing. Go watch it. Watch that last show. Probably going to have to go back and watch the previous two.
They're
Um,
incredible. I've been live for every one.
okay.
Um, and I give Nick all the praise in the world for somebody who's only ran 3 shows. Every one has been absolutely amazing. I don't know what is in the magic bottle they're selling, but it's something Chicago's been missing for a long
Well, and
time.
that was, you know, you could look at it and say I've been in the business for 29 years, but if you take out the 16 and a half years in my sabbatical, 12 years and then what like over 12 years, that was the first time that I'd been on a show that was officially a sellout.
Really?
That was the first time. I mean,
Okay.
IWA certainly never had a sellout. That was everything I did was IWA, which was another reason of like talking about why I'm so mad that that's tarnished by the reputation of one guy. It's like everything I did in the business, you wouldn't want to talk about. You wouldn't want anybody to Google, say, oh, yeah, go Google it and look it up, because then they're going to be in the Ian Rotten rabbit hole of like, oh my God, that was what you did, you know? And so it got to a point where like, I think I told somebody at one point, like I went back to get my master's to try to get into sports. I got the security job with the Chicago Cubs, couldn't get any higher than that, was applying at other places. I had gotten multiple interviews with the Cincinnati Reds. I had like a couple of phone interviews, drove to Cincinnati, did an in-person interview. And at that in-person interview, they were like, you sound like we love everything that you said. You look like you have the kind of experience that we're looking for. Um, what was the name? Because I just had professional wrestling
Oh,
on the resume for
okay.
12 years because it was like all I did. I didn't have anything else to put on the resume. And I'm like, sold tickets, promoted, did all this legwork for 12 years, professional wrestling. They asked for the name of the company. Never heard from the Cincinnati Reds again. And that was like after 2 phone interviews, an in-person interview. They
It's
wouldn't
crazy.
return my calls. They wouldn't return my emails. Nothing. It just was like, as soon as I told them the name and they went and they Googled it and looked it up, it was done. And so I started like telling Nick Mano on stuff is like, I'm just going to put that I was in jail for 12 years. I think
I
that'll,
mean, it's
that'll work. That'll work the same on the resume as having those 3 letters on there. Like, might as well just save myself the time and the effort, and would rather people thought I was locked up uh, for that time as opposed to anything else. So, um, to be able to come in, like there was definitely no sellouts there, and so to have one of my first shows back in this comeback, and it's sold out 8 miles from my condo. Like this was like floating on air. Like this is give me, I think I might have, I don't know if we've had so much discussion off air today. And then with the podcast, I don't know if I said it off air or if the people could have heard it, but it's like, give me, give me that, like the one thing that I can't get used to. IWA running 4 times a week, 3 times a week, 2 times a week, at least every week. And now like, it's like Bloodstone. I get it. You're quarterly. Let's would love for it to let's get monthly. Um, but you run monthly, then are you going to get a sellout every month? Who knows? It's don't want to pressure anybody, but like let's more shows more often. Because
I
it's
think
hard it's hard to get used to because wrestle arts love wrestle arts, but unless there's a spot show, like they just had a spot show in June, otherwise it's like every 2 months.
okay.
And Bloodstone seems to be like an every 3 4 month
Yep.
kind of thing, and it's like it's great, love it, we'll be there every time, but would love for it to be more frequently, you
Absolutely.
know and it's one of the things that's missing in the business today is not having those places, because how many places right now are running weekly, multiple times a week, every
Not a
week?
lot.
I
It's
don't.
very
I
rare.
mean, is there anybody? I don't know if there's.
Maybe Galley Lucha Libre, but I don't think they're weekly. I think they're like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, and they're in
Okay.
Chicago. But like
Okay.
other than that, mostly everything is monthly or bi-monthly or I know like
Quarterly or
quarterly. I know like
whenever.
CSW, Chicago Star Wrestling does like 11 shows a year. They take 1 month off.
Yeah. So I mean, it's
AAW is monthly, which that's the other big one. Freelance is monthly. So I'm not sure if there is. I know like here in Rockford where I'm at, they have like I think it's called Premier Pro. But it runs every Saturday, but I don't think I've ever been to a show, which is funny because it's right down the street.
right. It's in your town, but you haven't been there. So
I've never been.
it's
I've heard things not
okay.
good, like Ian
Okay.
Rotten style things. So
Okay. Well, it's good to know if they
just to
reach
keep
out
that
to
in
me, I
mind.
know to run away from that. You know,
So I'm not sure. It is missing though. Like I don't know. Like
well, like I said, nothing replaces in ring
yeah.
repetition and in
And there's nothing better than
real
that
world
live event.
experience. You know,
I think like OVW is one of those things that like I wish was closer because like Kentucky's far from us. But like
from Rockford, yeah, that's a far drive.
something like OVW in this area, I think could do really good. Obviously OVW has all the history and it's hard to beat a mind like Al Snow and Doug Basham. They're doing great things down there. But like I wish Chicago had something more consistent, if that makes sense.
Right? Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world.
Um, Jim, I want to first and foremost say thank you for this might be my longest episode. I won't know until I edit this. Um,
Well, it wouldn't
which
surprise.
is it's a blessing because you're talking to you. I could talk to you all day. Um, and something tells me this will only be the first of many lengthy conversations that me and you will have. So thank you.
Anytime, anytime. This was a lot of fun and getting to like on my show, the my crowd doesn't want to hear about the new stuff.
Okay,
They're my crowd for my podcast is focused on the flashbacks part. They
got
want
you.
like anytime I have the new like talk the new stuff, low numbers.
Okay.
They're like they want the old. So the fact that I get to come on, got to come on here and talk
So
old, talk new, talk future, that's a lot of fun for me to
definitely.
get to do all three instead of I love the past. It's where most of my glory is in the past, but you know it's nice to also like let's look at the present, let's hope for more in the future and see where we can go from here. And you know it was a lot of fun, so anytime I'm readily available.
Sounds good. With that said, I know we did at the beginning of the program. Do you want to shout out your social medias, or any upcoming events, any talent that you might have your hands on right now? Just let fans know anything, Fannin.
All right, so once again, that's Fannon's Flashbacks every Friday on my YouTube, which is youtube.com/sportsfannin. Because when I went back to get my master's, my big plan was to be a sports blogger. And so playing off the last name of, having the last name Fannin, I thought Sports Fannin was pretty original, so named my YouTube that 17, 15 years ago. Never really did anything with it, but then decided it's already 15 years old. My wife is big on like the more history something has on the internet, the better it is uh, for maintaining hits or whatever. So she was like, just keep the same name or whatever. So I kept the Sports Fannin name for the YouTube, youtube.com/sportsfannin. Every Friday morning, the podcast drops. Premieres at 6 a.m. Central Time. We're Central Time folks, so I'll give that one first. 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central. Uh, Out of the 39 episodes, I think I've been in the live chat for all but one of them. Something came up on one of the Fridays, and I wasn't able to do it. American Kickboxer has probably been in the live chat for 30 of the 39
Okay.
if I had to put a number on it. So if you want to talk to me or talk to American Kickboxer, we're in that chat every Friday morning. Um, as you can tell from this podcast, I go long, and so we're usually in there 2 3 hours at least. So stop by anytime in the morning, and we'll be in there to chat and can answer your questions, talk to you about it. IWTV is the preferred location for the podcast, though, because I do make money off of that. I've been telling people between the Fannin Family hats that I sold, I have some more coming in, but sold out of the first run out of the hats. Earlier last year, we for a while we had some T-shirts on a website that closed up and stopped doing it, so we don't have the T-shirts anymore. But between the hats, the T-shirts, and the money from IWTV for the people watching it, in 1 year, not even a full year, made a hell of a lot more than what I made in IWA MidSouth paydays over the course of 12 years with IWA MidSouth. So keep that coming. I love that. So, you know, watch it on IWTV. They got a lot of the promotions now. Dreamwave, if you're in this area, Dreamwave is they live stream almost all of their shows are live streamed.
Yeah.
And if they're not live streamed, they're at least on demand on the IWTV. The No Holds Barred Fed, their stuff is usually live streamed and all their entire catalog's on there. The IWA Mid South catalog is on there. So subscribe to IWTV and watch my podcast, please, and watch the Dreamwave, watch No Holds Barred, watch IWA, watch whatever's on there. A lot of good stuff that they have on there. Outside of that, there's the Twitter and Instagram, jfannin73. Wrestle Arts on July the 25th. So, like at the end of the week that this comes out, is Connor Hopkins and Trick Davis, who are in the Fannin family. Both of those should be very familiar to folks in the Chicagoland area with the federations that Connor's work now and that Trick used to work. And like me, Trick is coming back. So we've teamed up, and the Fannin family is Trick Davis, it's Connor Hopkins, it's the Rejects, John Wayne Murdoch and Reed Bentley. It's Mickey Knuckles. Willing to add more members. You can never have too much, and the more we have, the more opportunities to be on shows. So, I'm willing to do business with others. It doesn't have to just be those folks. Of course, it's a lot easier if it's the people that are already established in the family to be the ones that you bring into your shows. But in the anybody that's out there, the Fannin family is available. So reach on out. Email is bookjimfannin@gmail.com. If you want any of the people I mentioned, I can get you in contact with them or do the deal, like be the intermediary to get the deal done to have us come into your shows. And if you have somebody in mind that you think you want me to work with, shoot me a message, and I'll give it a look and give it a consideration, and would love to be on as many shows as can fill up my calendar. And but Wrestle Arts and Bloodstone are the priorities right now because they're the first ones that gave me the opportunity. So anytime you see Wrestle Arts or Bloodstone listed, hopefully I'm there.
Sounds good. Jim, like I said before, thank you so much. This was an honor and a privilege. You have reinvigorated my enjoyment, my excitement, and my love for IWA Mid-South. Um,
Glad to
and
have done it.
and I can't wait to see what is next for the Fannin family. Um, I have yet to have any member of the Fannin family on the podcast other than yourself. So let's try to check them off. That's the
Yeah.
goal, I think,
Uh,
for the rest of the year is to get the
I will
Fannin
tell the
family.
I will tell the guys how much fun this was and to give to give you some time to do it. So
Let's make it happen. Then we can have a whole catalog here on the
exactly.
podcast. You'll have your own playlist. Fannin
Yeah,
family play. We'll make it happen.
there you
Um,
go.
but I'll stop fantasy booking. I will let you enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Thank
All
you.
right.
And ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next time here on the I Love Wrestling podcast.